Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I wanted to show you a few more examples of what the completed character of the Shield Charge Facebreaker looks like in the end game, and by that I'm talking like tier 12 plus maps, fighting some tier 14, 15 bosses, and that sort of thing, as well as a zero run or two, and also discuss a bit about the Shield Charge nerf, which was 20% less AoE than it previously was, and that happened roughly yesterday. First of all, I'll mention that the 20% nerf shouldn't really change anyone's life. It's not great, obviously, but it should not dissuade you from playing Shield Charge if you wanted to. In any case, this is me just steamrolling a couple of tier 12s. I think this is a shipyard right now, tier 12. I've been running pretty hard maps, so I haven't shied away from too many challenges. Any map that has some bullshit rolls, I'm more than willing to do. And beyond as well, that's a little bit annoying for Shield Charge because you have to ping pong around so much more. But then you come across maps like this, which is absolutely glorious. I think this is a 77 channel, something like that, from Zana. And Shield Charge was made for this type of map. You just right click all the way down and one shot the entire screen every time you go through. And great success is had, and so is a lot of fun. Which is largely the reason I picked Slayer for this type of build, because of the AoE, and especially now with the nerfed Shield Charge AoE, you do want Slayer for maximum AoE. But that is not to say you can't get by without it, as I'll demonstrate later on in the video. This was a fairly tough boss fight notoriously. It had some damage mods and enfeeble mod, and yet the character's fairly tanky, so he can get away with doing stuff like that. By this point I have about 6k life. I'm wearing a Great Old One's Ward as a shield, because I did get a very strong chest. This is a double Duresso tier 15. I think they're fleet modded, but nothing else besides that. Maybe minus max and early weakness, I can't quite remember. But I'm actually very surprised I got away from this one with basically little to no damage here or there. It just was a little sketchy because there's so many goddamn swords with double Duresso. Had to port out and just reset flasks once, get back in and finish the face roll. Now, one thing I completely forgot about as my Slayer benefit was I shit all over Duressos in the last phase with my cull. So that 20% cull comes in so handy and is just so nice. This is an Atziri run. I did show you guys one Atziri run before, and that was my very first Atziri run. This is now the last Atziri run I did on this character, at about level 91 or 92, and 91 actually. And at this point I'm using Hatred plus vulnerability, which is my highest damage setup, but I don't really like to run because it leaves me with almost no mana, and there's no prolif from Ash. As you can see though, on the 5 link we are still just shitting on everything. Atziri Trash stands absolutely no chance, even with the AoE gem. Initially, when I got into Atziri zones, I was using the Conk Effect gem because I needed that extra damage to kill the trash. This is now the trio Ghosted. If you remember the previous kill, it was a bit harder than that, and same with Atziri Ghosted. I basically take no prisoners here either. And that is largely because of Ancestral War Chief Totem. With my 4-link totem and buffs up, let's say Flasks and Val Haste, he's pulling about 150k DPS all by himself. So if I leave him to try and kill one of these ads, he will do it in about 3 seconds by himself. So with my Shield Charge, it just makes it all the nicer, and they do die fairly quickly. One other thing to note is that I am sometimes stunning these Atziri split phases, as you can see, so that one doesn't even get to cast her Flame Blast ever. It becomes quite handy. And once again, the cull. As for the actual nerf itself, we did lose 20% area of our shield charge from when it was originally buffed, and I'm going to be showing you that that's not entirely a big deal, because this is the current nerfed version on my Slayer, and I took out my increased area gem. So right now I'm on a 4-link, and that's without an area gem, which should simulate any other type of ascendancy without Slayer buffs, because right now Slayer gives me 40% increased area, and I have 15% increased area from the Templar tree, meaning that's all I have, which is what every other Ascendancy should be aiming for, through the use of the Templar tree and the increased area gem. And this is an Enfeeble Springs with no increased area gem, and that basically negates the entire perk of my Slayer class. And it still clears pretty fine. Granted, I do notice a difference not having my area gem. It means I usually have to go over a pack once or twice more, but that's not really a big deal in the life of this character at the moment. The other thing is, you could also use a Carcass Jack to actually gain some more area on most other Ascendancies. And if I was going to play, let's say, a Crit Elite Inquisitor, which I will in the future, I would probably use a Carcass Jack. But I opted out of one for this Slayer because I did not need any more area effect. So as you can see, this is with the area gem on Slayer, and Slayer is still absolutely unaffected by this 20% change, at least as far as you should be able to notice. So feel free to play Slayer for your shield charge goodness. It should still feel absolutely wonderful, and I doubt you'd actually notice the 20% loss. But I think you can play other Ascendancies just fine, and especially if you wear a Carcass Jack, grab the Templar area here, or maybe even the Witch area if you're lucky enough to be playing an Elementalist. But I'll wrap up by talking about, let me get rid of this, by talking about the endgame setup here for my current Facebreaker Duelist, which is now level 91. We've hit 6.2k life, that is with Perma Fortify and about 39% armor. Physical reduction from my armor at all times. Got a little bit of evasion, that really doesn't matter. Got 44% chance to block as well, and most of the time I am running Herald of Ash with vulnerability, but you can run vulnerability plus hatred, or you can run hatred plus Herald of Ash. I usually swap around based on the map mods. Now as far as gear goes, I've just changed around a few pieces. I've bought a new ring. This thing is essentially exactly what you're looking for. Really good physical, maximum life, a coral base, and a few resists. But I had to buy this ring as well, just for int purposes, and Fizz Mana Leech. So this Fizz Mana Leech takes care of all of my mana sustain, and that allowed me to drop my mana flask that I was previously using. Next up, I bought an Astral Plate that was completely unlinked, and this is more or less the smartest way to go about it. Either buy a 6-link Astral or get one from Celestial Justicar and then have fun trying to roll it with Chaos Orbs, or buy a really strong chest and then link it up yourself, because we don't really need a 6-link, so a 5-link will absolutely do. My 6th link at this point would be Added Fire, just so I can still swap in Conk Effect over increased area whenever I want more damage, so I'll still have Add Fire on top of all of that, but at the moment we are running Shield Charge, increased area, and Melee Fizz. Those are our 3 staples, and then I added Fortify and Faster Attacks. 6th link, like I said, would be Added Fire. Besides that, as always, Abyssus. You don't even really notice the downside of the increased physical damage taken at this level of life with Fortify, with your flasks, and with the armor. So I tried as hard as I could to fill out my defenses and resists from other pieces so that I could also maximize my DPS by wearing a Great Old One's Ward. By no means is this mandatory or Meganod's mandatory. I would say you only really should be using at least one of these, but I was trying to squeeze as much DPS out as I could. So you could grab a belt with lots of life and resist to help fill out your gear, or a shield with lots of armor and life. I would prefer the shield with lots of armor and life if you're going to drop one of these 2 pieces, because you can get an extra 1500 armor and 100 life in a perfect situation, and a whole bunch more resist to ease up the stress on the rest of your gear. And the rest of the gear I think you guys have already seen. Try and get some Facebreakers at 750 plus, that's about all I could say there. I am running now a cast when damage taken, increased duration, and immortal call setup. That basically lets me take care of porcupines, as you saw in that map just then, and also an enduring cry with just 3 endurance charges whenever I feel like I need them to proc immortal call just a little bit longer. Ancestral Warchief is attached to faster attacks, melee fizz, and conk effect. In town, standing here, he's got 50k. That's with a vulnerability up, and he goes pretty ham and absolutely carries you on single target. Besides that, I just then have tried swapping out my Basil Flask for a Lion's Roar. Lion's Roar still provides a fairly similar amount of fizz reduction, but ultimately not as strong, because this is more of a pure physical damage reduction. Regardless, it does give me up to 58% thanks to actually being a granite, but on top of that, it actually gives you 34% more melee physical damage during the effect. Bit of knockback, no one really cares about that. But the point is, it gives you a whole bunch more damage. So when we pop both of our flasks, my average damage does go up quite substantially. And when I have absolutely everything going, I'm talking Slayer buffs and just, flasks and frenzies and everything, I do hit about 30k or 20, yeah, about 30k, I think, with Conk Effect average hit on my shield charge. Now, granted, that's only on a 5 link. With a 6 link, you would hit another 20-30% of that, and we're looking pretty good to take down just about everything. I think at this point the character should be able to do Uber Zeri, but I'm just not in a position to try that, and I more or less have to bench the character because I'm just running out of endgame maps, and the crashes associated with a shield charge have made me pretty frustrated. That said, I really do love this character. It was very fun to play, it was very satisfying to charge back and forth at the speed that you do, and I still highly recommend it as a pretty cheap baseline shield charge character for anyone that wants to play it. Yes, Abysses are up to about 2 exalts at this point. They should go down in price, I think, as more enter the market, because they're just going to keep getting found. But besides that, everything's fairly easy to get, fairly cheap, I think. Just, if you want really perfect stuff, it's going to cost you a bit more, and you, of course, don't need a weapon for the build. I have put up a guide for this build as well, so feel free to check that out. And I should also mention, the last few points that I've used, once I've gotten up to like 85 plus, I've had to just find things to get. I filled out these shit life nodes, I've filled out these average melee nodes, and I also got this life leech here, so that I can have more reliable leech when I don't use Blood Rage, which is very rare, by the way, but if it falls off. And on top of that, it's actually making my leech a lot stronger, since I don't have Val Pact, and the leech now regens quicker with these 3 pretty efficient points, I would say. That's all for now, guys. Thank you very much for following this guide and for watching, and I'll see you next time with another build.